Shalom everyone. How are you? I'm Siso, and I'm happy to be here to do the sermon of this week. This week is a special Shabbat. It's Shabbat Zachor, right? The Shabbat that we are commanded, we are obligated to remember the story of Amalek. Before we'll go to the story of Amalek and to our Parashat Truma this week, I want to tell you the story of my window here. See, when we moved to this very small plain kibbutz house. At the moment we moved here, Asaf looked at it. Now it's a big window, but it used to be a very small one. And he told me, we have to open this window. It will be beautiful. We have beautiful view. Unfortunately, it's nighttime, so you can't see it. But maybe I would just post a picture of what you see from it. You see the Gilboa Mountain. It's a beautiful view that we have from this huge door now. And I told him, we will leave you probably 1 year, 2 years for that, to do all this balagan, to open here, to ruin the wall. I think it will be too much. And we didn't do it. When we did it when we came back from Providence, like, I don't know, 7 months ago. We did it. And it's amazing. Now we have so much light when it's daytime. I'm saying, how we didn't do it before that, right? A lot of times we have like idea about what we want to do, but then we say, it's temporary. This house is temporary. This job is temporary. So why to work so hard for something temporary, right? And then we found ourselves sometimes 10 years later with this temporary table and temporary chairs and temporary house, but we still live in it after a decade. How it connects to Zachor? Just a minute. Well, so as I said at the beginning, this Shabbat is Shabbat Zachor, and we are obligated to remember the story of Amalek. זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק בדרך בצאתכם ממצרים. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt. אשר קרך בדרך ויזנב כל הנחשלים אחריך, ואתה עייף ויגע ולא ירא אלוהים. How, I'm sorry, this translation I'm not like full-hearted with it. How, undeterred by fear of God, He surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary, and cut down all the strugglers in your rear. קרחה בדרך, He met you like on the way. That's what I will translate. ויזנב בך כל הנחשלים אחריך. And He like went after all the struggler that goes at the end of the camp, and you are tired, ולא ירא אלוהים, and under by fear of God. Okay. זכור את אשר עשה לך עמלק. Remember what He did to you. And I think just one of the basic questions are, why it's so important to remember what Amalek did to us? Who knows who is this Amalek? What do we want to do? Want to go back and tell him you are not okay? Well, we don't have this nation anymore, maybe. And also, Amalek they weren't the only nation that attacked Israel. Like, we have all desert in front of us, we will have other nations that will attack us also. Well, so most of the commentators will answer why it was important, why it's important Amalek and not all the other nations that attacked us, because he was the first. All the other nations were still afraid from what we heard about the going out of the children of Israel from Egypt. But he was the first who dared to say, oh, they are not that holy. Look, I will fight them. I think that's one of the common explanation of the situation of why Amalek is so like miyuchad, why it's so important, just the Amalek story. Another reason that some of the commentators said, that I think it's the Ramban that say that he wasn't working through the desert rules. Fiefs have like their own inner rules. So that's also the ancient time, and also till today. There are rules of how you play the game, how you fight. And Amalek didn't work with that. Like went to the end of the camp and said, "Oh, I want to sell you some things. I promise you, I come for peace." And then he attacked. That's the Ramban explanation. Another way to see it is what happened in the Israelites, in the children of Israel, that made Amalek able to fight and to attack. And that's the pasuk of Kol hanichshalim acharecha. Who was those vulnerable people at the end of the camp? So Midrash Tanchuma would say, Chasrei koach mechamat chit'an, shehaya he'anan koltan. That's really interesting. Those are the people that didn't have the strength. Why they didn't have the strength? It's not because the journey or the moving out of Egypt was hard for them. It's because of Chit'an, because they sinned. When they sinned, probably in Masa Meriva, they wanted not just manna, real food, and because of that, the cloud that was surrounding the children of Israel and keep them safe, like let he, it let them go, and they weren't under the cover of this cloud. Each of those explanations, well, especially about the Nechshalim Acharecha, the fact that the Pasuk says, Kol Nechshalim Acharecha, all the people that went at the end, the one that didn't have enough power, it's not saying something good about the children of Israel. Because if you are a community, right, you need also to take care to the people that it's hard for them to walk, even if we are not doing according to the Tanchuma. It wasn't the best point, Nekudat Zohar, it wasn't the best point, the best timeline of the children of Israel. Even if some of them had seen, or just the fact that they just got to the desert and they are not desert people yet. They were slaves, but they're not used to how you work in the desert, how you fight. They're not fighters yet. They're in this lineal time. They just moved out of Egypt, and now they supposed to become warriors. They supposed to become desert people. And in this lineal time, but now they're supposed to do this transfer. Well, when you are in the army, you say that the lineal time is the most dangerous one. Dawn. You don't see good because it's not night, so you can't use your night view equipment, but it's not day yet. That's the time that people will try to sneak. This is the nekudat torpa, the vulnerable time, a vulnerable point. Because it's not here, not there yet. Maybe that's the problem of this meeting with Amalek. We are not yet warriors, and we are not yet maybe in the mindset that we need to keep also our vulnerable people not at the end of the camp, because maybe someone will sneak and try to fight us from them. So maybe we need to remember Amalek, not because Amalek was that bad, and we need to remember how bad they were. Maybe we need to remember Amalek because we need to remember how we weren't good enough. Like we didn't have this community resilience yet to save all the people, even the people that are, they're still at the end of the camp. And that's a moment that we need to remember. Be aware. In those moments, we might hurt ourselves. And it's not matter even if it's the part that weren't Yirei Elohim, the people that just had sins. Because in the moment that in a community one gets hurt because of this enemy, so everyone it affects everyone. It affects the resilience of all the community. But maybe, as we say, sorry from that, my mindset is from the army. At the moment in the army, they say if you know that the dawn is the most vulnerable point, that idea that you have in mind makes it less vulnerable point because you are aware. So maybe Zachor et asher sam lecha Amalek supposed to say, oh, be aware from those times. Be aware that you need to look of all the community, even the people that are not that good. And in Parashat Truma, it's interesting because also in our parasha, we have something quite similar. We also speak about the temporary, about this linear time. How? In our parasha, we're supposed to build. We have the structure of how building the temple. But it's not the temple that we'll build in the Moriah mountain. It's the temporary tent, the temporary temple, Hamishkan. And then when we read the parasha and we see all the small details about how to build it, the question is, why not just a tent? Because it's only on our way to Israel, but in the moment that we'll be in Israel, we're supposed to build a real temple. And if it's just temporary, again, why all those details till the, how much, how big everything's supposed to be, how it's supposed to be to look, and it's not just the details; it's something that you need to work hard to have. Like you need to put a lot of power, a lot of engagement in this building that it's only temporary. Well, maybe because the temporary might become the most permanent thing. Who knows how much time we will live in this temporary building, temporary temple? How much time it took to the temple, to the temporary temple, to become Bet HaMikdash? Well, a lot, right? Just in King David time, they built the temple. So usually when we have this temporary thing, how much time will be in this temporary building? How much time it will take till COVID will finish, right? It's only temporary. Hopefully in a month or two, things will change. But as we said about Parashat Zachor, in this temporary, in this in-between, in this liminal time, usually our power is not good enough. Why? Because we are in short of breath, not because of COVID, because we say, oh, in a week the lockdown will finish. In a week the schools will come back. In a week we can go back to shopping, go back to what we were. But then a week goes, and another, and another. And every time say, oh, I will tell you that. Now we had lockdown in Israel 5 weeks. Some of us still, in some parts of Israel, it's still lockdown. And I think with my kids, I said, okay, in 3 weeks for sure, the kindergarten, the schools will come back. I say, oh, just one more week, just one more week. And this third lockdown, like, finished all our strength. Why? Because we are waiting. We say, oh, in a minute it will finish, in a minute it will finish. But it's not. So here in our parasha, in Parashat Truma, we see that is in this just temporary temple. There is a lot of details, and most and foremost, and the most interesting part of it is the nedava, the truma, that you need to give it as a gift, right? דבר אל בני ישראל ויקחו לי תרומה מאת כל איש אשר ידבנו ליבו תיקחו את תרומתי. Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts from me from every person whose heart so moved him. אשר ידבנו ליבו. That his heart wants to give this present to help building the temple. Nedava is altruistic power, right? It's something that I'm doing beyond me. I'm going out. I'm not just egoistic, just looking what's happening to myself. I'm looking outside and I say, okay, I want to give. charity. For that, I need sometimes like to raise my head to see something more than temporary and to be able to have strength to give it and to see what's happening that's around me. Because usually when we are in the time of need, we're just looking in ourselves. I have to say, in this 5 weeks of lockdown, I said that the thing that most was hard for me is that I couldn't see my neighbors. I saw my neighbors. But if someone was in quarantine, I weren't able even to make a cake or to make a soup because I was struggling with myself. So I couldn't look outside. And also, we don't give charity in like philanthropic in this liminal time because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. So it's not the time that we will, spread our money. And our parasha says, no, do something. Something in the sense of giving, a communal act. Even though you are in not an easy position, because you are just in between and you don't know what will happen tomorrow, that's the time that although that you need to raise your head and do something for the community, something for you as part as the community. And if you would be able to do that step, if you would be able to look outside and not just about you and how much it's hard to you, if you will do this, it's a possibility you might be able to build a temple. Maybe that's the foundation of a house for God, for worship, and also a house like a good house, a human house. Can we look at the surrounding in us, what's around us? If it's our family, if it's our community in the big sense. And from that point, if you have serious house that it's stable and it's mashmoti and it's full with arachim, with not just good deeds, but ideas, then if you build a serious house with values, that's the word that I look for, with values, you will have the power, even in this weird time of in between, while we are waiting, a time to work, avodat kodesh, a worship, to worship and to have meaningful things. You just, even in this crazy times, to build a structure and to build full-heartedness, nedava, from your heart, as the pasuk says. And if we put a lot of hard work to build it, it might make us to bring us powers. We give powers, we give hard work, and maybe because we gave hard work and something has been built, it will give us powers. The chazara on the way and the other way that we can go through the desert. But it's not just the be able to go and take the thing, to give this charity, to give this money, to give this gift. It's the idea that we are invested in something that we are doing together. We are all together building our dream house, even if it's just for some years. Because maybe, and just because it's temporary, we need to make so much effort and so much thinking about how it's going to be looking. Just because it's temporary. Usually temporary, we usually like not working that hard. We will not buy a new table. We will not open the wall because it's only temporary. Let's wait with what we have. But our Parashat will not teach us that if we want resilience, we need to work hard also about the temporary things. We need to take it seriously and invest time, even maybe even in the temporary, in this liminal time. That's the most important time to look at it seriously, to think how we build this time in a way that will help us go through this time. Maybe it's an idea of mindset, that we have roots, that we are connected. That's what makes a tent to a temple. That's what gives power. That we all worked hard together to build it. And from there, we can continue. And then the Amalek nation can't hurt us. And this vulnerable point won't be vulnerable point because it will make us to be resilient. It's unbelievable that a year ago it was just the beginning of COVID. Who would believe it? And now when we are trying to think about it in a week, how Purim will look like. Maybe Purim, but how Pesach will look like this year. Well, if things will start to go back to normal, it will be great and it will be very happy. But if not, we need to be prepared. That's what we are learning from Parashat Truma and also from Parashat Zachor. We want to be prepared that we won't be the Nechshalim. We won't have those people at the end of the camp, that we are not taking care of them, those strugglers. Our head will be ready. We will have resilience. And we will remember that to cope with the liminal, to cope with this in between, how we do it, we just look at it and we are trying to figure the way in the best way. That's how you win Amalek. You win over Amalek and COVID. And the idea that our life can't be the waiting for Godot, and we are not waiting to the Prince Charming who will come and save us. Because the real thing happens while we are waiting. Shabbat Shalom.